for the next hour. As our regular viewers are aware, on Just Law we normally discuss an area of law which is of interest to you, our viewers. But secondly, and more importantly, Just Law is a live show, so our viewers can call in and ask any questions that they have on any aspect of the law. Hopefully on this show we should be able to cover matters as diverse as immigration matters, criminal matters, family matters, etc. So whatever your queries are on English law, please do pick up the phone and give us a ring, and hopefully we'll have a discussion about any questions that you have. We normally have a lot of questions on immigration law, which is fantastic, but whatever your questions are, do pick up the phone and give us a ring. Just a couple of points before we get going. As always, it's a live show, so we're only able to take brief details from you live on air. If it transpires that we need to take more detailed instructions from you, then I'll ask you to leave your number and then we can have a more thorough discussion after the show. Secondly, another caveat, obviously we're not able to look at your documents because it's a live show, so it may be that you've received certain decisions from the Home Office, etc., decisions from the tribunal. Obviously we're not able to look at that. You'll only be able to provide us with a summary. So, but if it transpires again that we do really need to look at your documents before we can advise, then I'll take your number and then I'll give you a ring after the break or after the show, and we can have a discussion as to how you get the documents over and what we do with your case. But in my experience, normally we're able to deal with at least 90–95% of queries live on air without having to look at the documents that you have in your possession. So with that out of the way, normally what we do is that we discuss a topic which is topical and which is of interest. Last week what I wanted to do was to look at how to make a successful spouse application, and this is a topic we normally cover every 2 to 3 months. And the reason we cover it with such frequency is that it's in practice you find that the majority of the applications which are made and which cause difficulties are spouse applications. It's how does somebody who live here, who's got married abroad, how do they successfully apply for their husband or wife or fiance to come to the United Kingdom and join them on a permanent basis. In my experience, I think the vast majority of applications that I do relate to spouse applications, and in my experience the problems that people encounter with the immigration rules, with the Home Office, normally do relate to a problem over their husband or wife or fiance's spouse application. Something's happened, there's been a problem somewhere along with the documents, or there's been an interview that's been conducted, there's a problem at the interview and the husband or wife can't get a visa to come to the United Kingdom. Now, in reality, what I do tend to find is that in the majority of cases there's an obvious mistake that has been made, and it's because of that obvious mistake that somebody hasn't got a visa to come to the United Kingdom. It may be that a certain document has been missed out. For example, let's say a TB certificate has to be submitted with a valid spouse application, but that's missed out. So in my experience, it's normally quite an obvious error. It's only in a small proportion of cases where the Home Office makes a decision where it's not apparent why they came to the conclusion that they did. But in most cases, you are able to tell. Now, that's the background to why we want to sort of explore today how a spouse application should be made, and also look at some of the tips. How do we make a successful application? What the pitfalls are, what we need to avoid, etc. Because what you see throughout these cases, you see common mistakes occurring on a regular basis. So we'll sort of flag those up, and we'll go through that today. But as I've said, it's a live show, so there's a number that will appear at the bottom of the screen. So do pick up your phone and do give us a ring, even though it doesn't relate directly to the matter we are going to be discussing today. Now, I think that one of the best ways to look at spouse applications is to really split the documents up into what we need from the applicant's home country, and then secondly, what we need from the United Kingdom. looking at the first category first, what documents do we really need from the applicant's home country? So the husband or wife or fiance, maybe in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, wherever it is, they'll have certain documents. And in the vast majority of cases, you'll have to request that the documents be sent here to the United Kingdom, because what you will be doing is submitting those documents to Sheffield. The reason for that is that what's happened over the last few years is that spouse applications aren't normally processed in the applicant's home country anymore. It used to be the case that the embassy would consider the spouse applications, make a decision, and the documents would need to be submitted there. That's all changed over the last couple of years. All the supporting documents have to now be submitted in Sheffield. There are some countries still that do require documents to be submitted in the home country. For example, I think Saudi Arabia, the setup there, it's still, you submit the documents there. I think Kuwait, that's still the setup there. I think in Iraq, Kurdistan, that's the setup. But the vast majority of applications that we deal with, India, Pakistan, etc., the documents are normally submitted in Sheffield. So which documents do the applicant, which documents do they normally have in the home country? Generally speaking, there are three key documents that they have, which you need to ensure are posted to you in their original format. So if I just run through that before I go into these in greater detail, they will normally have the original marriage certificate back in their home country. Secondly, they'll have an English certificate, and thirdly, there will be a TB or a medical certificate. So they're the three key documents. They're mainly certificates that they have in their home country, and they are the documents that you will have to request be sent over to you here in the United Kingdom for them to be submitted to Sheffield with your own pack of documents. So let's look at these documents in greater detail, and let's look at what we need to look out for when we're looking at these documents. Let's take the simplest one first, the marriage certificate. So what does the law say? As far as the marriage certificate is concerned, the law says that you need to be married in accordance with the law of the country. In most circumstances, you will have to, if it's an Islamic marriage, you will undergo an Islamic marriage. And in most cases, most countries will have a system whereby the marriage is registered. So if you take, for example, Pakistan, there'll be a nikah, and that's normally registered with a registry office. So there might be a stamp from Tehsil Mufti there. If it's Azad Kashmir, there'll be a slightly different setup. But whichever it is, there will be a system for we'll have a system for registering the nikah. We'll look at that in greater detail after we've taken our first call. Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Ji, thank you for calling.
I'd just like to ask about what does the law say about if you have evidence to prove that you've been suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Okay. And
the NHS are covering up every time. And so is the government, and now they're not willing to see me.
Okay.
So what can I do to prove these points?
Okay. It depends how the carbon monoxide poisoning, how has that come about? Is it because of something in your house, or?
No, because I'm a long-term sufferer, and in the house last year when the government said change your boilers if they're 5-year-old.
Yep.
And then they said change them, and we changed them because of their rule.
Okay, all right.
And then they provided it, and then now we found out that the boiler was leaking inside the boiler system.
I understand. Is it still leaking, or is it now fixed?
No, we repaired it, because before these 9 months I've been getting more ill with my other illness.
See, what should have happened is when you realize that there was a problem with your boiler, normally what you should do is you should first of all get an expert in. An expert to look at the boiler who confirms that there is a...
I've got all that. I've got all the evidence.
Okay, so if you've got expert evidence that says that there was a problem with the boiler, you then need medical evidence which confirms that whatever illness...
I got that today, yes.
Okay, so what medical evidence will say is whatever the illness is that you have, it's as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, if you've got those two pieces of expert evidence in place that in relation to the boiler emitting carbon monoxide or excess carbon monoxide, and medical evidence which says your illness can be attributed to that, that would normally hopefully be enough for you to be able to bring a claim against whoever installed the boiler.
But the installer is the one who's in hiding. I've got his name in the book, and he's under the gas safe people. He's a registered Corgi registered.
Okay, it may well be that he may be in hiding, but it may well be that he has insurance. So even though he himself may not have money to pay out, he may have insurance that you can claim against. But what you should do, this is quite a technical area of law where you should really speak to a solicitor who does this kind of work. Okay. But if you've got those two documents in place, the expert evidence in relation to the boiler being faulty and medical evidence which confirms that your illness can be traced back to excess carbon monoxide, then I think you've got enough to seriously look at issuing a claim. Now, you say this person's in hiding. I'm sure your lawyers would be able to track him down. If he's
we've tried our best. I've been to the address that's given in the books, and the gas people are saying that we're not allowed to give information of our workers to other people.
Okay. Did he work for a company or did he work on his own?
He had his own named. He worked under the gas safe registered company.
Okay. Okay.
And then but he's working like a local engineer himself.
I understand.
So he's got his own name for the companies that he made up.
Okay. I think if you're finding it difficult to trace where the person is, normally lawyers use inquiry agents. There's other professionals that they use to try and track people down. So if you yourself are finding it difficult, I think you should definitely speak to a lawyer. Hopefully somebody who does personal injury work or medical negligence work. It's normally those kind of lawyers who have expertise to deal with these kind of matters. If you speak to them, they will hopefully be able to track him down, because what we tend to do is, obviously we don't know how to track people down ourselves. That's not our expertise, we're lawyers, but we use other professionals whose job it is to try and locate people, especially people who are trying to hide. Because in reality, people do leave prints behind in terms of old addresses that they might have used for stuff. They might be on the electoral register, they might be paying council tax, etc. So there's always a way normally to track down somebody in the United Kingdom. But it's the kind of case where you should definitely be talking to a solicitor. I think if you've got those two pieces of evidence, it looks like you may well have a decent case. Thank you very much for your call. As I've said at the outset, any questions that you have on any aspect of English law, immigration law, etc., please do pick up the phone and give us a ring. So just before the call, we were looking at spouse applications, and the first document we were looking at is the submission of an iqanama. The point I was making was that you have to be registered in accordance with the law of the country in which you are having the marriage. And normally there will be a system for registering your marriage. So whatever the system is, you've got to follow that, and that normally results in a certificate of some kind being issued, and we need the original certificate. If it's not in English, then obviously that will also need to be translated. So that's the first sort of easy document that you need to get from the home country where the applicant is based. Now, the second document you can get, or you should get, is the English certificate. Now, there are certain rules about which certificates are acceptable to the Home Office. The starting point is, in the vast majority of cases, there will be a certificate which is known as A1 Life Skills, which is the most basic form of testing somebody's English ability. So it's the A1 Life Skills certificate that you would need to obtain. There are exceptions to the English language requirement, or where somebody's over the age of 65, or there's a medical reason why somebody can't pass the English test. But in the vast majority of cases, you will need to submit evidence of English. And my experience, in the vast majority of cases, the evidence of English will be the A1 Life Skills test. There are other ways of proving the applicant's ability to speak English. It could be that they have done a degree course, and if they've done it in the UK, that degree certificate in itself is enough to demonstrate that somebody's English is at the required level. If you've done the degree abroad, then there's normally more hurdles that you need to get over before the Home Office will accept a degree which has been done by the applicant in their home country. So in the vast majority of cases, it's the A1 Life Skills Certificate that will have to be submitted with the application. So that's the second certificate that you need to obtain from the applicant's home country. The marriage certificate being the first, second being the English certificate. That, in my experience, doesn't really cause many problems. The third document, the third certificate, is the TB or the medical certificate. The Home Office still has a system whereby from the vast majority of countries where somebody is coming here to settle, they want to be sure that they don't have TB. So there's a method for having a test done to establish whether someone is TB free or not. And that test is normally done at an approved clinic. And in order to find out where to go for that test, if you just go into the Home Office website, on the Home Office website where the pages deal with spouse applications from abroad, it will tell you which countries from which countries you must do a TB test, and also there will be information there as to where someone needs to go to have the test done. What you tend to find is that in most of the main cities in a country, there will be a clinic where one will be able to get the test done. Normally, it's a relatively cheap test that needs doing. I think the cost is normally in the region of £50 to £60, and the test certificate is normally issued on the same day. The only thing you need to bear in mind with the TB certificate is that the validity date is quite short. So when you're preparing an application, you should normally do the TB certificate towards the end when you're about to submit the application. There's no point doing it right at the outset and finding that because of some kind of delay, the TB certificate has now expired. Contrast that with the English certificate, which is normally valid for 2 years. Now, as I said at the outset, these are 3 documents which the applicant will have in his or her own home country, and these are the documents which, generally speaking, they will need to send to the sponsor in the United Kingdom. Again, the reason for that being that the documents in support of the spouse application will ultimately be submitted in Sheffield. So they're the 3 key documents that they tend to have abroad. Now, sometimes matters may be slightly complicated. For example, the applicant who's coming over from abroad to the United Kingdom might have had previously been married, might have undergone a divorce. Now, if that's the case, you need to be careful. You need to ensure that there has been a proper divorce in accordance with the divorce procedures of the home country where the person lives. So, for example, if somebody lives in India and they've been properly married before, they've had a registered marriage, and if they've been divorced, it wouldn't be sufficient simply to say, well, they've just had an Islamic divorce. There would have to be a formal divorce having been done. So there's obviously a court system similar to the United Kingdom, where the court system has a family division, and it's from there that a divorce certificate would be issued. So there has to be, in most cases, the proof that the formal divorce as required by the home country has been done. There may be some countries where the divorce procedures are generally informal, and that system of going to a court or going to the registry office to register the divorce doesn't exist. If that's the case, then that procedure which applies in that home country would need to be followed. So in essence, I mean, they're the main documents that the applicant would have in his or her own home country. Now, again, you get those documents here in order to put the file together. The next key problem that applicants tend to face is problems with financial documents. And we normally receive a number of calls regarding financial documents. What documents need to be submitted? The key point is that it really does depend on how you earn your income, and that really determines what kind of documents would need to be submitted. So for example, if you're employed, there's certain type of documents which need to be submitted. If you're self-employed as a sole trader or a partner in a business, there are certain specific types of documents which need to be submitted. If you operate a limited company, then there are certain types of documents relating to the limited company that need to be submitted. If you have substantial cash savings and you're going to rely on that as your means of meeting the financial requirement, there are specific rules which relate to that. And again, there are a number of other examples that one can look at in terms of the kind of income that you have and the kind of documents that you would need to submit. It could be that you've got rental income, it could be that you don't have to meet the minimum income requirement because you're in receipt of benefits. So there's a whole range of different types of documents depending on your circumstances which need to be submitted. Now the key point here is that you need to work out which category you fall into and then work out which documents you need to submit. Let's take the most common situation that you come across, which is where somebody is employed. In my experience, in the vast majority of cases, that's what you deal with. Probably in about 70–80% of cases, the applicant's sponsor in the United Kingdom will be employed. And they are normally the easiest cases to deal with because the evidence that need to be submitted are quite simple. The evidence is quite simple. There are three mandatory types of documents that you need to submit. One is the wage slips, second is bank statements, and the third mandatory document is an employment letter. There are additional documents you can submit which are not mandatory, for example a P60, the contract of employment, etc. You can submit those documents, but they are not mandatory documents. What you need to concentrate on is ensuring that the three key mandatory documents are in place. So you've got your wage slips, your bank statements, and your employment letter. You need to ensure that those documents are submitted. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's look at wage slips. And here it's not sufficient that you submit 1 month, 2 months, 3 months wage slips. The law is quite clear. You need to submit 6 months wage slips. So if you're getting paid on a weekly basis, you will be submitting 26 weeks wage slips. If you're getting paid on a monthly basis, it will be 6 months wage slips. If you get paid on a 4-weekly basis, it will normally be 7 weeks of wage slips that you will be submitting. If you submit 6 weeks, that will only cover a period of 24 weeks. So you need to get your period right. And generally speaking, you should submit either original wage slips. That's the best thing to do. But or if they are not original formal wage slips, what you should do is when your employer provides you with an employment letter, the employment letter itself should confirm that the wage slips, although printed on plain paper, the wage slips which are attached to the letter are genuine and authentic and have been issued by the company. So the key point is your wage slips. The second key document is your bank statements, which cover the same period as your wage slips and also has all the payments for the wage slips that you're relying on going into your bank account. And it's apparent when you look at the bank statements that this is the payment from the wage slip, this is the payment for month 1, payment for month 2, etc. You should be able to follow it all the way through. Now again, they have to be original bank statements or a bank statement which has been issued by the bank and which is stamped if it's on plain paper. Otherwise, that in itself could be a reason for refusing the application. Now, so that's the key point about bank statement. What we will look at, we'll be going for a break in a bit, but what I want to look at in greater detail, and this is where the majority of the problems occur, it's where the wage slip gives a net pay figure, it says one figure, and then when you look at the bank statement, that money isn't shown in the bank statement. There's a discrepancy. For example, the wage slip might say the net pay is £230.10. You look at the bank statements and it doesn't match up. It could be just £230. And what I want to do after the break is look at that in greater detail, because that's where the most common problems occur with pass applications. We'll be back in the next few minutes.